Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Joliet, class of 2006, and I wanted to welcome you all to the Connect Four for the Leadership program. We're just going to go ahead and get started here. So I'd like to start by thanking our participants for joining us today. We have Dr. Alexandra Perry. She is the interim dean of the McDonough program. We have Joshua Radloff. He is class of 2025. We have Jean Neal, class of 2016. And we have Erica Russell Ebe. I said it wrong again. I'm sorry, Erica. Class of 1994 joining us. But before we get started, I wanted to make sure that everybody on the call and out on Facebook knew who we were. We are the Marietta College Alumni Association Council. This is our mission statement, but it boils down to our job is to really work to more closely align the alumni, our classmates, with the college and get a better understanding of what's going on and what is happening on campus. And this program is a direct result of that. So thank you for joining us and helping us achieve our mission. I would invite you all to connect with us on social media. You don't have to type these in. I will put them in the chat so that you all can just click on the links. And I would also encourage everyone on the call to put their LinkedIn links in so that we can all connect and stay apprised of what everyone else is doing. We are all McDonough Scholar alumni, or most of us anyways. So thank you. And with that, I'm going to do some quick introductions. We have Dr. Alexandra Perry. As I said, she is the interim dean of the McDonough Center for Leadership and Business, and she teaches classes on leadership studies and ethics. She also serves as the director of PIO 201, which is the sophomore general education course, and is the faculty advisor to the Student Government Association, which might have been called Student Senate when you were on campus, or something else. I think it was called something else before that as well. She has more than a decade of experience in clinical ethics consultation with several major hospital systems, and she served as a leader on projects around prenatal and neonatal supportive care, addiction medicine, and racial justice in healthcare. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Perry.
Thank you.
I'm gonna move to also Joshua Radloff, class of 2025 from Milford, Ohio. He is a math AYA major with a teacher leadership certificate, and he is currently the Excel coordinator for the leadership program this year. Thanks for joining us, Joshua.
Thanks for having me.
And next up, we have Mr. Jean Neal. Jean is class of 2016. He currently is a senior manager of career and leadership development at Macy's. He's also nearing completion of his master's at Xavier in clinical mental health counseling. He holds a part-time internship with the University of Cincinnati Health System and has been teaching yoga for 5 years. During his time at Marietta, Jean received his BA in organizational communication, human resources, and had a minor in leadership. And he currently lives in Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area with his partner, Brandon, and their 2 dogs. Thanks for joining us, Jean.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
And then I'm going to bring on next, we have Erica Russell Ebe, class of 1994, who's going to be our veteran alumni. She is currently, I love this title, by the way. She is currently serving as a fractional chief revenue officer for technology companies and business coaching to individuals and advises the investment community. She has a knack for leading outside sales teams and creating multifaceted partnerships. Most of her career has been at large multinational fintech corporations, but she also enjoys working with startups. Erica is an avid meditator, just like Jean, and was certified to teach meditation by the Chopra Center. She lives in Atlanta, Georgia, with her husband, Jake, their dog, Baxter, and she has a son who is an adult now, Brett, and a grand dog, Coda. Thanks for joining us. And your moderator for the evening, I'll stop talking, I promise, is Mickey Hart, class of 2008. Mickey has the distinct pleasure of actually being one of my leadership orientation students that I got to lead. So we met probably his first moments on campus when he pulled up to, I think it was Marietta Hall, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And I got to help unload his stuff and got to meet him. He's from originally Parma, Ohio. I don't have his bio in front of me, but
I'm not
that's
as
what I know.
important as the actual panelists. I'm just here to keep the conversation flowing.
Awesome. Well, thank you all again for agreeing to participate. I'm going to let you all go for it.
All right, thanks, Mike. So I guess just to begin, we were having some crosstalk before everybody got on, and I heard a number that was pretty astounding. So Joshua, do you want to tell everybody how many students we're expecting for this upcoming year's Excel class?
Yeah, for sure. So, from what I've been told, we've accepted around 140, and usually by this time of the year, we've usually accepted it's either like 100 or 110 or something like that. So we've accepted a lot more. And obviously, like not all of those students are going to come here, but we're expecting a big cohort of upwards of 140, which is like one of the biggest that we've had. So that's super great to see.
Absolutely. So Erica, let me ask as a follow-up, how many were in your freshman class?
Like the students entirely? I wasn't even sure what that program was.
In the McDonough program.
Oh, in the McDonough program. Actually, Anna might be able to help me with this one. Maybe around 30. Does that sound right, Anna? She's on mute.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot, Erica. Hey, good to see you. I think we started out with 50 or 60, but then by the time we graduated, it was like 30. Because remember the big whitewater rafting picture? That's what's in my head.
Okay.
That was a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And at that point, it was just, it was not a minor program as well. We were considered scholars we graduated as scholars of the McDonough program.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing to hear that growth. I was class of 2008, and I think we were 60 to 70 maybe in the class. So just over the past almost 20 years, which makes me feel really old, to hear how much that's expanded is absolutely incredible. But I think it also leads to vastly different experiences. So to kick off the conversation, I have just a pretty simple question, and we'll start with Erica and work our way up in terms of class structure. But Erica, what made you choose McDonough at the time?
Yeah. McDonough was really what brought me to Marietta College. I had been involved in a lot of leadership activities throughout my educational career prior to college. And I grew up in Parkersburg. I graduated from Parkersburg South High School in 1991. And my family really wanted me to stay close. And I was really looking kind of near and far. So Marietta having the leadership program really kind of, enabled me to choose an education that I was really excited about, that also kept my parents happy.
All right, Gene, you're next.
Well, actually, Erica, we probably have a lot in common then that I didn't realize. So I also grew up just outside of Marietta. I went to Warren High School. And I, conversely, though, I did not want to stay. I wanted to get out. I wanted to go somewhere different. And so I looked at a variety of other institutions, and I thought that I was for sure going to leave and, land in Pittsburgh or Columbus or Cleveland or Cincinnati or somewhere else. But McDonough was the nugget that kept me coming back to campus. I met the faculty members, I met some other students, and I was just noticing that it was a program that a lot of other institutions that I was looking at just didn't have, or at least didn't have in the same way, at the same capacity, the same breadth of resources, alums, programs, things you could study and focus and work on. And it just really kind of sealed the deal for me. So I broke my promise to myself and I stayed at Marietta for 4 more years. But obviously very, very glad that I did. So.
All right, Joshua.
Yeah, so I grew up like around Cincinnati. So like from a bigger, like I was growing up outside the city, but I had like a lot of bigger schools around me. But I didn't really want to go to like a bigger school, which was odd because when I was looking at colleges, I ended up looking at a lot of bigger schools. But when I looked at Marietta, I seemed to like become more fond of it because of like the community. But when I came and found the McDonough program, it was kind of like the sense of community there. Like even just from visiting the college, I was able to see that. And also like I grew up in Boy Scouts, so like there was a lot of leadership development stuff there. So being able to see that, like being able to like practice that at a college level was something that like I didn't see at other colleges. And also like them giving us scholarships to be able to study leadership was something that like I hadn't seen, and my parents were in full support. They're like, if like this school is supporting you and like studying leadership, then like I don't know, we were like, this is like a no-brainer. There's like no reason why this school isn't literally built for you, because you're doing all these things in Boy Scouts and other things. But if a college is providing you these opportunities in such a great way, then I don't know, it's kind of sealed the deal for me.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I'm the opposite of that. I wanted to go to a big school, especially growing up in the Cleveland area, but a friend, singular, that was accepted to Marietta that made me check it out. And I just, you fall in love with the place, and then you learn about McDonough and how unique of an experience and an opportunity it is. Just how many different aspects are being thrown at you in those classes. You're learning politics, you're learning history, you're learning religion, you're learning a little bit about, economics. You kind of have everything grouped into all of these classes. It's unlike anything you can get anywhere else. So that was really what sold me on Marietta. So, Dr. Perry, how about you? What sold you on coming to Marietta, joining the leadership program, now being the interim dean?
Yeah, so I actually interviewed for a faculty position in 2012. And part of the interview process, I got to teach or kind of do a mock classroom with a group of first years, and Jean Neal was in that class. And so it's kind of neat to have you on the call now. But for me, it was the caliber of discussions going on in those classes. So walking into a first year classroom, seeing students from all different disciplinary backgrounds, and then hearing really graduate level discussions on leadership, it was, like you all have said, unlike anything I had ever seen. And so, I stayed at McDonough in Marietta for a few years, and then took a hiatus and came right back. I felt like there was nowhere else in the country that you could get the kind of experience and have the kind of impact on students that you do through McDonough.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. We're glad to have you. So, yeah, like Mike said in the beginning, this is kind of an open conversation. I don't want to be peppering everybody with questions. I'll throw some out there as they come up if conversation starts to die. But, I guess, how has the McDonough program helped you guys out in day to day? Joshua, I know you haven't graduated yet, but I'm sure McDonough has bled into some of your other classes or stuff going on in internships. So I'm interested to hear the impact it's had outside of the classroom or outside of Excel.
Yeah, for sure. McDonough has helped me first with connections. So with McDonough, we're able to like do service, and it's like a requirement for us to like do community service. And a lot of times that just happens locally. So I've been able to make like connections with people who work at like local food pantries, for example, and I've been able to use that as a reference for so many other things. And I've been able to get some of my I've joined a fraternity on campus, and I've been able to get other people from there helping that as well. So it's just kind of like simple connections that I was able to make through the program have allowed me to like use that to help others make those connections as well. So being able to like have the confidence to go and make those connections. And also I'm studying to be a teacher. It's kind of helped me with like learning how to network with that kind of group of people, because studying to be a teacher is like different than like studying to be an engineer. And like you do internships when you're like in engineering, but when you're like student teaching, like what I'm going to be doing, it's a different kind of networking, and being able to like understand how leadership impacts that has been something that is like kind of transferred from like the leadership program into the education program that I've seen a lot, if that makes sense.
Two examples. One more about the people, and then one more about kind of the what I learned and the skills that I gained. In terms of people, first of all, just the alumni and people that I still stay in touch with today that I was in the program with. You form a lot of close relationships through a lot of the activities and the service and things that we do together. But even beyond that, I met some alumni who were on the advisory board of the McDonough program when I was a student at Marietta College. And two of them happened to live in Atlanta. And at that time, I did not know that I was going to move to Atlanta. And I still stay in touch with both of those older alumni to this day. You know, I should say more experienced alumni, really. And they helped me, you know, get jobs early in my career. And those jobs ended up being where I met people, where I got my next job. I mean, every job I've had has been through people that I know. I've talked with a lot of recruiters over the years and interviewed in a lot of different places, but every job I've ever taken has been through my network. And it started with, you know, two alumni from Marietta that I met through the leadership program. So definitely grab all of our LinkedIn profiles and message us. And, you know, I'd be happy to talk with anybody or share my network or my experiences with anybody. And then the second thing I'll say from a skills and learning perspective, you know, I kept all of my leadership books. I look over here as I still have them on my bookshelf, but I used to keep them in my corporate office. And people would come into my office, and I don't know if this is because I was the kind of person that those spaces weren't necessarily originally designed for, or if it was just because it was so impressive, the number of volumes of leadership, you know, books that I had. But people would come into my office consistently over the years and say, "Have you really read all those books?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I really did. Not only read them, studied them." And, you know, we studied, one of the models we studied was a situational leadership model. Throughout my career, that model is still to this day being used in business. And, you know, so then I end up knowing it much better than anybody else in the room because, you know, I studied it in depth. And so these are just things that, you know, if you know, when you get into a people leadership role in whatever field you get involved in, the models that you've studied in undergraduate will continue to be used and applied in various settings throughout my career, and I would expect for yours as well.
I know this wasn't intended to be like a round robin. We all answer the question we're going to anyway. I think there's a couple of themes that you both mentioned that I wanna touch into as well. The first one being the connections piece. Macy's has been my first and only first real job, if you want to call it that, since graduating. So I've been here 7.5 years. And I got this job through an alumni connection from McDonough, from Excel. And
Gene, was that Ashley Wolin by chance?
Sure was.
Okay, he's in my class. All right.
Yep, it sure was. And so, you know, at the time, I didn't know that, you know, it's not like I had some master plan crystal ball. I had no idea that that's what it would lead to. And, you know, even though just, you know, 7.5 years in, there's a long career ahead with a lot of different new twists and turns that will come. But what I think is really cool about it is not only was I able to use the connection and, you know, to get an opportunity I wasn't planning for, but one that's given me a lot of different experiences at a pretty rapid pace. And now being able to do leadership development on the corporate side is really interesting, which leads me to my second tie-in, which also situational leadership has found its way quietly into the background of some of the things that we've worked on. But even just today, honestly, I was watching Josh Berson's like HR 2024 trends report of, you know, what are things that HR professionals need to be doing as we move into, you know, the land of AI and new leadership and all of these things. And a couple of things stood out to me from that I thought really interesting and very timely today, which is that the amount of resources, time, and energy that organizations spend talking about leadership, but actually have zero clue how to invest into appropriate leadership development experiences. They had a lot of stats to back this up, and it was interesting as they were talking about it. But as they were talking about trends going into this year, I was just thinking as they were running through this tick list, I'm like, this is all stuff I remember from Lead 101, 103, 201, 203 of like empathy and leadership as organizations, situational leadership, how to adapt styles, connect with people first, you know, some of these like principles that I'm like, how is this earth shattering to people? But they were things that I was taught at McDonough however many years ago. And so anyway, I won't drone on from here, but connections and the content truly is proven to be very much standing the test of time, and clearly is very foundational to where organizations are intending to go.
So Dr. Perry, to follow up on that, how does all of that match up with faculty's expectations on what students should be getting out of McDonough?
Well, I'll say it's just so nice to hear that alumni, even years later, are able to think back to the curriculum, because I think it's always funny to me, the first year students get through Lead 101 and they're like, oh my God, that was so hard. But then they're able to use it, and we find like 103, 201, 203, which most of you all took, they're able to articulate what they learned in 101 in a way that I never, in teaching in other disciplines, I never was able to see them kind of draw those connections. And so then to hear that alumni are using it even years later is it's impactful when you've taught those classes and, kind of watch the students struggle through the concepts. But I think, what's really nice to hear is that you're able to apply it practically. That's something we really work hard on, is bringing case studies into the classroom, giving students experiential learning opportunities where they can apply leadership. We've been talking a lot lately about leadership laboratories, right? So not just teaching it in the classroom, but then saying, okay, you've learned about situational leadership. How do you as a college student apply that? You don't always have a lot of opportunities. And so creating those leadership opportunities across campus, outside of campus, and letting students try out those skills, I think it gives students the confidence that they need to carry it forward in their careers. And it's nice to see that you all are picking up on that thread and able to do that later on.
Absolutely. Keeping the conversation going, Joshua, you've got a couple tenured alumni here with great careers. As an undergrad, do you have any questions for them as it pertains to McDonough or your Marietta College experience in general?
If there were to be like questions about McDonough, it would be about how Excel was run in the past. Because I've talked with lots of alumni about past things they've used to do and why they can't do some of those things and why we could do some of those things. But I don't know if I'm allowed to ask how Excel ran for them. Is that something I could ask?
Absolutely. No dirty secrets with Excel.
Dean, do you want to go first? Because then we can kind of keep it in order chronologically.
Yeah.
And I could kind of,
Yeah. We could do a whole offline thing if you want, Josh, at a future time. But some of the things that I remember that stand out, that I really appreciate now. I appreciate at the time, but I think I just took for granted that that's just how I saw it run, and so I was able to sort of replicate certain experiences or try new ones out. I just remember the amount of autonomy and flexibility that we were given to really craft the experience, and to stake a claim, really advocate for, hey, this is something we want to add, change, practice with, experiment with a little bit differently. And here is why, and here's what we think the value in that would be. And having faculty members and advisors say like, okay, if you believe that, then like, let's try it out, let's go. I remember that being a huge takeaway for me, that I was like, oh, wow, you're trusting me to run what equates to a rather large percentage of all incoming Marietta College students. Like, you're trusting me to figure that out. Like, that's pretty awesome. Oh my God, I just looked at the chat. Shout out. I appreciate you too. And so that was one of them. The other one, I think, theme-wise, we've also all connected to already in this conversation, the different connections that we were able to build across campus. So whether that was with student life, athletics, administration, admissions, the folks running like sort of total orientation, was a really nice learning lesson too, and just like how to develop good partnerships, and good partnerships and good relationships will ultimately lead to quality, transactions, if you want to call it that. But the relationship coming first was really, really meaningful, and is like a skill that I'm still using every single day, whether that's in my Macy's job, whether that's in, seeing counseling clients at my internship. So yeah, I would say relationships, and then also just the flexibility and the encouragement from the staff and the faculty.
Cool. Yeah, a lot of those were in place when I was there too, even though it was quite a while ago. So maybe I'll just kind of touch on some of the more memorable things that come to mind. And then you guys can kind of let me know if it's still happening or if it's one of those things that shifted or what the case may be. There was the concept of leadership across the campus. And Jean, I think you used maybe some different words, but kind of that concept. And that was really important because I've kind of shifted my career a few times, but because, we were considering, and we had professors come from different departments to teach. throughout the time in our program. So, you know, we thought about leadership in the sciences, we thought about leadership in the arts, we thought about leadership in organizational development and in psychology. And, you know, so we had a lot of different lenses through which we were looking at leadership that really I've used and applied. And if we have time, I could get into some examples and things if that would be of interest. Another thing I would say is I think the program, since like you said, it is so flexible, for me, it helped shore up areas that I really needed. So I felt very academically prepared for Marietta College, but socially, you know, I was a little bit less prepared. Even though probably at the time it might not have been so obvious, but I felt very unprepared. So, you know, having a lot of experiences like service learning experiences, just that experiential education was really important. And in addition to giving more exposure to alumni through that program than through anything else I did on campus, I'll tell you a story on myself, actually. Dr. Stephen Schwartz was the dean at the time, and we remember him fondly. When I came, I don't know if you still these, but we did an in-person interview for the program. So when I was still a senior in high school, I came to the McDonough Center, which was brand new at the time, and that was like the fanciest building I'd ever been in my life. And so when I went into his office for the interview, and I almost couldn't catch my breath and talk because I was just, and it completely shocked me because I have been involved with public speaking forever. So I'd never had that experience before, but just, you know, being in that beautiful of an office with a person as illustrious as the dean of the program. And, you know, it was very intimidating for me. And that was kind of an example of whereas, you know, I was involved in a lot of things in my teenage and early 20 years. But, you know, that exposure to that kind of social interaction was something that was new and that I needed some shoring up on. I think the other thing I would say is the service learning I ended up using in my first job when I first moved to Atlanta. I was the head of a nonprofit organization, and I ended up teaching service learning. Kind of like we were saying earlier, Jean, you know, people haven't really taken the time to study leadership or to even contemplate leadership. So the fact that you've been in this in-depth study of leadership and all of its facets that you've been studying during your undergraduate career, you know, you'll find that you'll be far ahead of a lot of people throughout your life, really. But then you can apply those different pieces throughout. You know, in that first job, it was service learning. Throughout my career, it's been more kind of the organizational development and you know, management kind of theory and things like that I've applied. But really, it's been throughout.
So let me hop on that. Let me get you all back to your freshman years. I want to hear the most impactful part of leadership orientation, Excel. You know, it's gone through a bunch of different names. I think one of my years there, we called ourselves moles because we were the McDonough orientation leaders. That obviously didn't catch on, and Excel quickly came in. But I want to hear, like, as freshmen, what was most impactful? Because for me, it was the experiential aspect of it, where you had to be involved with everybody. There wasn't a choice because I'm very extroverted or introverted. Sorry, that wouldn't make sense. I'm very introverted. So being forced to do that. But then also I had a bit of a unique experience. My second day on campus during orientation, I got strep throat. So I was out for half of orientation, but because I met Mike when he was moving me in, he was nice enough to take me down to Walmart or CVS to get my meds, take me to the doctor, take care of me. When I came back at the end and did whitewater rafting, it was like no time had passed and everybody was still close. So it was those bonding aspects that you don't necessarily get in a lot of other programs that really stuck with me. That was one of the things I enjoyed most, you know, as a leader those following 3 years. So for the three of you, you know, thinking back to that first week of freshman year, brand new on campus, what was it about orientation that really hooked you?
Well, I guess I'll start. I would say, like, are you talking about like the part that hooked us or like most memorable part or both?
Both. If they're not the same, then both.
All right. Well, I would say that there's two parts to it. So like during Excel, we have our own small groups. So the times that we had during small groups were some of the most memorable times. I've met some of my best friends through that, and I still keep in touch with them today. And it's just like when you first get to college, and I know it's not a big college, but it's still, bigger than high school because it's like a bigger area, more people. So being able to have a group of friends that you are initially put with that like you know, you kind of have to interact with. And I'm very extroverted. So like I was talking with everybody and doing everything I could, but having a group that I could go back to and just talk with was amazing because my roommate wouldn't move in until like a week later. So I was just like, it was just me and other people in the program. So having that small group was one of the best parts. But then the other part would be like the evening activities part of it. So after we had done all of our activities for the day, we'd have a planned activity in the evening. So whether that was going roller skating, ice cream, watching a movie, stuff like that with the entire cohort or whoever wanted to show up, that was some of the most memorable parts because we could just talk and chill out with all of these like other freshmen who were kind of having the same experience. It was some of them, it was their first time away from home. Some of them, they'd been away from home and they were excited for the college experience, and just being able to mingle in that way with other people who had, you know, the same ideas about what we were going through was just truly a magical part of, you know, the whole experience. And it kind of made me want to be a leader in a way.
And I think for me, it was kind of a two-parter. I think within that first week of going through the Excel workshop, it was the really meaty conversations that we were able to have there. So I remember going through the like, I can't remember, I'm going to mess up what it was called, but it was like the trolley experiment conversation, more of like the ethical conversation. Like it was things like that. It was things like the breaking boundaries experiences in the small groups with tossing the ball around and answering whatever questions and, you know, being pushed to write and reflect and think. Like they were just ways that I hadn't been pushed to think before. And while it was uncomfortable, I knew I was supported by my small group, by all these faculty and staff members, all these people I was meeting, by other group leaders, by other peers. And so, you know, then as we proceed to go into Leadership 101, and we have this first semester, first year of these really sometimes really raw, vulnerable conversations in classes, you know, active discussion, like active debate and disagreement, and trying to work through, wrestle with these different ideas and perspectives. That first week, I feel like, was what set us up to be able to have those conversations because we had built this sense of community. And so now I'm not just arbitrarily, you know, going back and forth with someone in a class. It's rooted in a sense of like, no, we have this connection, but we can also have this really meaningful conversation, and learn something from one another. And so I think for me, that was something that thank you for the question, Mickey, because I actually hadn't really ever processed that. But yeah, I think that was something that really stood out for me.
So is there any testing, or we did the Myers-Briggs at the time. Do y'all still do that, or another kind of, do you do Enneagram maybe, or?
So we do Myers-Briggs more informally now, and we've talked with Joshua a little bit about what else we can implement, but not as much as we used to.
Well, okay. I love the Enneagram now, if anybody wants to kind of talk shop about that kind of stuff. But we did the Myers-Briggs at the time during that first week, during the orientation. And one of the things I remember really vividly was Dr. Schwartz and Professor Bloom, who was an English professor at the time. We remember him fondly as well. They both passed on. But what we did was we broke down each of the Myers-Briggs types, and they put us into groups, and we would do an activity where we were all with people from our same type. So all the E's were together, there would be like 5 E's together, 5 I's together. So it'd be like several groups of E's and several groups of I's, and on with each type. And then we could really see how the types were different, because after we did the activity, then somebody from each group would share with the rest of the room how that activity went among our 4 or 5 group of people. And gosh, it was just such a great illustration. I remember specifically like some of the outcomes of that, and just how that was a really vivid example of the differences, and how, you know, we thought the way we were doing it was the way everybody would do it. And then we kind of, you know, very quickly found out that there were other ways to do it. So Dr. Schwartz and Professor Bloom were pretending to get up and start to lead a session. And then they got in an academic argument over what was being taught. And of course, it was a stage thing. We didn't know at the time at first. And one of them, you know, like kicked a trash can across the room and stormed out and got all upset. This was actually the sensing and intuitive. So then we like wrote down what happened. And it was just so memorable to, like, you know, I was an intuitive type. So, you know, our group was like, oh, they were an academic. You actually could probably already tell what I am by the way I described that, right? But then the sensing types were like this happened and this happened and that happened and that happened. Like they would be like great witnesses for a criminal trial or something, because they knew the facts and the order of what happened. And we were like, no, there's this bigger picture thing happening. And so it was so interesting. And then the other brief thing I'll tell is we really almost died whitewater rafting. So that was very memorable. We got stuck on Table Rock and everybody got knocked out of our boat, our raft, except for me and the guide. And the guide, she her T-grip came up and hit her in the nose, so she broke her nose. And she was so tough. I mean, it was impressive. But the rest of it was like a good leadership lesson, because the rest of the rafts had to go into emergency mode to help, because our paddles and everything that had been in our raft were all over the river. So that was very memorable. We survived.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Did you guys do whitewater rafting like for the leadership program, or was that part of your freshman orientation? Because how we do it is we do something else for like our challenge course day, but during freshman orientation, or as we call it now, home, then we go whitewater rafting. So I'm just trying to determine if it's two different things or the same thing.
No, it was definitely leadership, because I did not go to freshman orientation. I couldn't afford it. So I did, the leadership program was part of the academic year and the semester. So that was included. But I did not go to orientation. So I'm not sure what they did at orientation at the time, but the leadership orientation was about a week long. We did ropes course stuff, which was like brand new at the time. It was very innovative and cool. And yeah, the whitewater rafting was part of leadership.
Yeah, we had both, and then Marietta orientation was something different. So as Mike said, the college stole the whitewater rafting idea. Once I stole, it's all the same program. They just decided to co-op it because it's a great idea. It's a great bonding experience.
Yeah, Josh, the year that that I was coordinator was one of the years of transition. So it was the first year that the college brought back whitewater rafting after a few years of not doing it. And then we still did like the high ropes challenge course situation, and kind of figured out like, how do we weave these things together? Because they also, the weeks like kind of quasi overlapped. So it was really an interesting experience. Wasn't quite what we planned for, but it worked out. It was okay.
Yeah, I'll say my freshman year, so when I was in Excel, it was like at the end of COVID, so we couldn't really go to a high ropes course. So what we actually did was they had like a lot of different games built for us, but we also like ours was more of like a hybrid one. So like we had like a bouncy castle obstacle course and a slack line and stuff like that. But then the next year we went back to a high ropes course with a zip line. And then this past year we actually went and we worked with the rowing coach, and we were able to have Excel small groups on boats, like rowing. And I don't know, everybody, like a lot of people seem to enjoy it, even though it was like kind of raining most of the day. But we might try that again, because it saves us a little bit of money, but also it's like kind of like a cool team working thing. And a lot of people haven't done that before. And I don't really know a lot about rowing, but I know that there's a lot of communication and a lot of teamwork involved with it. So that's just kind of something we've been trying. I don't know what your guys' opinions are on that, but I figured I'd share what we're trying right now.
I think it's a really cool idea. I'll be candid. I'm a really bad swimmer, but if you could get me over that hump, I'd be totally cool for that.
So I want to include Dr. Perry on this. As faculty looking in, has there been any one experience or a pattern of experiences you've noticed over the years of leadership orientation that really sticks out to you?
Yeah, I think, and I'll comment on maybe the most memorable, but also the hardest part for me as a faculty member, and especially now as the dean who oversees orientation or Excel, is kind of giving students the room to fail and learn from failure. Both Jean and Joshua, I've had to sit down and have really, really hard conversations in the middle of Excel or after Excel, and let them work through challenges. I mean, everything from, getting a call at 3 a.m. that they just left the roller rink and they can't find a student. And, what do we do to find that student? They disappeared from the roller rink, and we did find that student, by the way. Or navigating mental health challenges, or navigating, I think this past year, someone who was planning forgot to let the cafeteria know we were coming one day and they didn't budget meals for us. So kind of standing back and saying, okay, this is the student's orientation and we want to give them sort of a safe space to navigate failure is probably one of the most challenging parts. But I think the part where when I talk to alumni years later, it's one of the more impactful parts, because I don't know, the confidence that you gain in having worked through a significant challenge, it can't be matched in other ways. And again, creating safe sort of boundaries so that people can fail without it really impacting student experience to the point that we, have to manage risk or something like that, I think is really impactful. But again, hard as a faculty member to stand back and sometimes watch that failure and see it play out.
It's Dr. Perry, you saying that you just brought back a memory that I clearly have blocked out. So Josh, if you want something to chew on for like when you're in the throes of it during the week of, so I had mentioned that the year that I was the coordinator was the year that the college infused whitewater rafting back in and it overlapped. So we actually like kind of had half a day of quiet time where all of our students were gone rafting with everyone else. Well, when they came back, I guess there was a whole debacle, there was some miscommunication, but essentially we had a whole set of evening plans that were going to pick up right when the buses dropped everyone off, only to find out that only about half of our students had been fed and hadn't eaten for hours and hours and hours on end. And there were a variety of all these other things that happened. Couldn't get a hold of Dr. Joe Pacella, who was the faculty advisor for the program at the time, couldn't get hold of any other faculty members. So it was like, all right, well, I know I'm supposed to be a good steward of the budget of the Excel budget, but here we are. Now I'm ordering however many pizzas and foods and salads and all these things for all these people and like getting them delivered as quickly as possible and doing these things. And then later someone's like, well, what'd you do? And I said, I don't know. I said, we'll figure out the money later. We'll just deal with it later. I was like, people need to eat, like all these things. And, Dr. Perry and others are like, you figured it out. I was like, I don't know, I just figured I'd ask for forgiveness later. But it was one of those things where I'm like, there was no rule book to prepare me for 50 students getting off the bus saying, I'm starving, I haven't eaten, and I don't care what you have planned for me. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds good. So just oddball things that pop up, but you're right. I think there's a lot to be said for that safety to be able to fail and try it and just go. And like, I wasn't going to break something so bad that it couldn't be fixed, but also like, if I was like coached through that whole thing, I don't know if I would have gotten the same impact out of learning like a quick skill, like how to make a fast decision, commit to it, go with it, and be willing to work with it later.
Pizza is a great use of the budget. Anybody who says otherwise is lying. You're good. So during your orientation experience, did you guys have the rain stick? It was like Eric, I see a little.
We did at some point. Oh, go ahead.
Say it's like at the end of the day, anybody can get up and say whatever they wanted about the experience.
Okay, we definitely used a rain stick at some point during my time at Marietta College, but I don't remember at which point it was.
Gotcha. So my question was going to be, did you go sappy, honest, and from the heart, or did you try to play it cool in front of everybody? Because the rain stick was always a great experience for everybody, but everybody played it one of two ways. You either tried to be cool in front of everybody or you were honest.
Wow. I don't know what I would have done. That's a good question. I probably couldn't help but be sappy because I am that big picture person and I like to kind of go into that kind of depth, and I probably would have gotten sappy pretty easily. But I probably would have tried to be cool about it. So I don't know that I would have been like, I definitely still had that, I was concerned about how I was perceived as well, I'm sure.
Well, as you might guess from the person who's now about to graduate with a master's degree in counseling, I took the sappy route. I didn't cry, but I did take the sappy honest route.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say I was savvy. I was definitely more bubbly, like more like outgoing. Like I was like ready. I was like the first one to grab the rain stick because I wanted to talk because I had stuff to say and also wanted to make other people feel more comfortable in talking. So definitely not the savvy type. So
I tried to play it cool in my senior year. I cried like a baby.
I am dreading that part because I know for a fact I am going to cry my senior year when I do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just happens. And then you get everybody to get up and give you the big group hug, and all of a sudden it's warm and bubbly and happy again.
Can I ask a question? Do you guys still do the rainstorm at the end of the last meeting? Okay, because that's where I cried.
Yes, we still do that.
Yeah.
So moving away from orientation into, the bulk of the experience, the 4-year experience, do you have a favorite course or a favorite book that still sticks out to you? Jean and Erica, I know you're talking about how McDonough and Erica, your book collection has really helped in your career. So anything specific in your time here that really stood out?
Actually came across, I believe it was Robert Greenleaf's The Servant Leader. It's a little booklet. I don't know if you still use it. Yeah. So I actually wrote, I should try to post it somewhere where it's easier to see. On my LinkedIn profile, I wrote a post about this several years ago because I came across that booklet and started reading it again. And the thing that I remember that I wrote about, although I'm sure there were some other points in there, was that he was involved in leadership programs at AT&T, and I ended up working at Bell South early in my career. So, and one of the things he was doing was helping prepare the company for different kinds of people to be leaders in the company. So the fact that I got the roles and the promotions that I did at Bell South, which was AT&T got broken up into a bunch of different companies, and Bell South was one of those. So this person that I had studied in the leadership program actually helped prepare one of the companies that I would end up working at for me to be able to be in the roles that I was in. So that was really meaningful for me when I came across that book and saw that. So check out that post on my LinkedIn profile if you want to kind of see a reflection that just came very naturally several years ago from one of the texts that we studied in leadership.
That's a really cool experience. I'm like, yeah, I need to go check into that.
Small world, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was peeking behind me because I don't know, like one of those is the Kellerman book, one of those is Gama and Rob's book, one of them. So I have all of them sit back there. But I think there are a couple actually that stand out. One, I remember even at the time I really liked organizational leadership, and it just stood out to me, which given the career path at least that I'm on at the moment, that makes sense. But one of the pieces that stands out for me is the McDonough model, like the 5-component model with, because what's interesting is we talk about it a lot that I've run into at Macy's, but also with my counseling clients, we can talk about like the leader and the follower and what is the goal that they're working towards. And like, there's that microcosm dynamic, but a lot really begins to shift when you start talking to people about, well, what is the context? What is the environment? Like what other factors are influencing what's happening here that we're not actively asking questions about, but that we should be. And so one tie-in example I can share with you is a connection to, I think it was lead 203 for global leadership that I had reflected back to, which is what I had Dr. Perry for. That I remember covering, that's the course where we covered different cultures and things like orientation to time and high context cultures, low context cultures, like how do people engage differently with one another. And there was actually a project that we were working on at Macy's for our performance management model, and we were infusing these much more organic check-in conversations as opposed to just like a typical performance review. And at the time, that was a really new concept. Now lots of organizations are doing it. But the one interesting piece of that is that we had certain parts of our business that were really hard adoptions for that. And I don't have data to back this up. So this is just my own interpretation. But a lot of the areas of our business where we had difficulty with that were areas of our business where we had a lot of different cultural backgrounds of our colleagues. Really experiencing something different. And so when this model that we're telling people to use in the workplace is saying, you need to have direct, candid conversation, radical candor with your managers, you need to be open and transparent, and et cetera, that was kind of in competition with like who they are as people and how they engage as people and their views about that. And so it was something that we kind of had to stop and ask ourselves on, of like, how can we develop an approach to help people here have better conversations and be better employees, but in a way that respects that I'm asking you to do something that isn't natural to you. And so I think about that from time to time. And so that's sort of a couple ways that I like blend those things together. So, so those are two that stand out for me.
I do still have all my leadership books. They're not on a bookshelf though. They are sitting in a box in my room somewhere. But I would say, kind of like what Jean said, I am a big fan of the organizational leadership book. Probably a lot of because of the professor that I had it with, but also because of like the class I had it with. I had it with Dr. John Rogers. He kind of made it so that it was like just super discussion based. So like we would just come into class, making sure we had done the reading, and then we would just talk about all these things, and like we'd have different facilitations. But what I liked about it was that it gave like examples that were like relevant. So like it would have like examples of like leadership in organizations that like, I don't know, like Apple, Google, or like even Home Depot and stuff like that. And we were able to like relate to them in a way, even if like we, we're not like obviously helping run organizations or stuff like that, but we were able to see it because then we would relate it to the college and how the college is an organization and how different clubs that we're in are organizations and how we could run those. And it was just cool that like there was a book that like we could kind of see what we're learning in action and then kind of like just talk about it, if that makes sense.
Hearing everybody saying they kept their books, that I did not. At the time, the McDonough books had some of the highest resale on campus, and we needed to eat off campus sometimes. And now I'm like, man, I should have kept the book, but oh well. Dr. Perry, is there a specific course or specific book that you always get the most enjoyment out teaching to students?
So one thing that's been really neat is over the past few years, we've had a lot of our faculty and staff write textbooks specifically for the curriculum we have here. And so to see the 5 components model, which was developed here, appear in textbooks, and then to be able to see students using that is really kind of significant. We have an ethics class that's newer that actually I think Jean was not even here when you were a student, but Joshua, it's here for you. As an ethicist, right, I really love that class because we talk about all of the theories and models that we learn throughout the program and then the ethical implications of them. So kind of taking it a step further is really significant. But I'll have to echo what Joshua and Jean said. I think the organizational leadership class, which our students take their second semester, to me as an instructor, that's where the light bulb goes on. So first semester, we have them read Plato and Aristotle, and it's so abstract and they like it, but they're not quite sure what to make of it. And then all of a sudden you're putting practical case studies in front of them. And we talk about sort of, you look at the same leadership instance from the perspective of the political dynamic, the structural dynamics, right? Like, shift work versus non-shift work and how is the organization just kind of at its core structured? And then what's the symbolism behind that organization or that leadership interaction? And then finally, how does it impact the human resources? And all of a sudden you see students say, wait a second, like I had this interaction on the football field in junior year of high school. And now all of a sudden I'm seeing why I thought one way and somebody else thought a different way. And seeing that light bulb come on is, to me, so exciting. And just from that point on, you can kind of see students using the language of leadership and really kind of relating it to their own experiences, which is so significant.
So we're getting close to time. I know Mike's going to cut me off soon. So I'm going to ask for quick 20 to 30-second elevator pitches, to the juniors and seniors in high school who may be viewing this. What's your pitch on Marietta and joining the McDonough program?
So since I'm the one that's off mute, I would say that, starting with where I started in this hour-long session, the relationships you build are so important, and they're going to impact the rest of your life. Your relationships from high school, as well as the relationships you develop and whatever you do after high school. So I would say that the environment at Marietta is very conducive to building deep, impactful relationships. And then in terms of leadership, as you've heard from us today, what you learn in the leadership program will be applicable no matter what you choose to do. When I started at Marietta College, I thought I was going to be an educator, and I was studying political science. I thought I was going to teach social studies and then be an administrator. And I ended up keeping the political science major, but not becoming an educator. I ended up, but then when I graduated, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I led a nonprofit, and then I went into the corporate world. And now I'm kind of back into a consulting mode where it's a little bit more kind of people oriented, helping people be successful and effective rather than helping the companies be successful and effective. So it's been a bit of a journey. But in each of those situations, things I learned in the leadership program have been very directly applicable and really helped me to lead in those different environments. And it also allowed me to gain that time of building expertise and skills to where once I did lead people, then I could really, pick back up on those leadership skills in a new and fresh way in terms of leading people in large companies.
I think for me, it is, I'm actually thinking about a conversation that I had with Dr. Gama Perucci, who when I remember being a senior and sitting at the infamous round table in his office. And, he had said to me, I was preparing actually to go for my interview off campus for an offsite interview at Macy's. And I was so nervous because there were so many other schools and so many other people that were going to be there. And, he was like, trust yourself, remember these things. And, he gave me a nice little pep talk to like get me ready ahead of time. Fast forward, I got the job, come back, within the first year, and he and I are having a conversation. And it was the way that it was phrased, where what I had realized, and he kind of framed for me, was that McDonough really helped me learn not only about leadership and what leadership means and how it can look, but really how to think critically. And that, anyone can be taught how to do a function, but it's really hard to teach someone later how to think critically. And the program is so thoughtfully designed, and the curriculum is so well put together, and the experiences from Excel through graduation are so well curated that it teaches you how to think differently and think critically. And those are skills, to Erica's point, that are going to supersede industry, that you're going to carry that with you and continue to build and grow that, forever. And there's a lot of value in learning how to do a function, but there's so much to be said about learning how to think on the fly and really be able to think things through differently.
Yeah, so at least for like, because a lot of your guys' answers, which are amazing, they relate to like what you're doing after college, and I'm still in college, so I don't know how it's going to affect me yet. I just know how I hope it will affect me. But for the students who are like in their junior or senior year and are like wanting to come into this program, there's not another program like this. So like on this small college, you have literally a group of, in this case, 100 to 150 students that are in this, like you will see them for 2 or 3 years of your college career, and you are in a cohort, you are in a group with them. So like while you may have groups inside your major, you have another group built into campus where you are learning the same stuff, and you can talk about all of these things with that group of people. So what part of it is what I want to say is that you have your own network on campus, and with that network builds other networks. So when you do all these things on campus, you make connections with other people, but so do the other people in your cohort. So you, through them, can make those connections as well. So not only are you super connected with campus, you also are making connections with the community. And that's something that will like prepare you for life later on. I know I said I wasn't going to talk about how it helps you after college, but it kind of all links into it, where you have this group on campus that everybody is helping everybody to succeed in it. So that's just kind of my pitch for that.
Dr. Perry, close us out.
Yeah, so I would just say to future McDonough students, our students are, I mean, it makes me emotional, some of the best in the world. And seeing, our alumni and the way that they're changing the world, and they're really out there making such a difference. And our students on campus and how much energy they're putting toward welcoming new students. I mean, you will come here and you will find a way to belong because they will make sure of it. And so just having that sense of belonging that starts freshman year when you walk onto campus, but really carries through your experience as a student and then as an alumni. I can't imagine a more, we say a relentless welcome, right? But I can't imagine a more relentless sense of belonging than what our students get to experience.
All right, Mike, I think I went a little over time. Sorry.
You're fine. It was a great conversation. I told you that it would, the hour would go quickly, especially, they always do, but especially with McDonough students, they always do. Thank you so much for all of this. Just as an FYI, online on Facebook, we've had another 80 people watching throughout the evening, so that's great. So thank you so much. Erica, you got some shout outs from some classmates there, so you'll have to check out the comments afterwards. But I did get a couple quick questions, and we're right at time, but I'm going to push us for a minute just to get kind of a current state of the program. Dr. Perry, Jim Wilson had asked what new actions or programs might McDonough be looking at in the future. And I thought that might be a great topic to hit on before we ended.
Yeah, so we're really looking at making more industry specific certificates for leadership, because I think we've had great success with our teacher leadership certificate, our engineering leadership certificate. We're trying to look at healthcare leadership, nonprofit leadership, public policy leadership, business leadership as some of our next directions. Because I think, getting students to have all of the general McDonough classes, but then some, especially leadership laboratory type experiences in a discipline they want to explore is something that we've had good success with, and we think that students really are interested in.
Awesome. Sounds exciting, and I love the idea of kind of broadening the individual specializations. I think that's really awesome. So with that, I want to say thank you to Dr. Perry. I know it's a late night for you with kids at home. Joshua, thank you for taking some time away from homework. Jean and Erica, thank you for joining us on behalf of the Marietta College Alumni Association Council. We really appreciate your participation tonight, and it was amazing to hear about what's going on in the program. It's a program that's near and dear to both Mickey and my heart. So it was great to hear that. Thank you to everyone for joining us, both in the Zoom room and then on Facebook. I think it's really, really exciting just to kind of see everybody come together and have these conversations and talk about a program that is so special to us. So thank you. Thank you. Don't forget to give us a follow if you're online, or we posted the links in the chat and on the Facebook wall. So go ahead and give us a follow. We are working on our next Connect 4. I'll plug it really quick. It will be featuring the psychology department. I'm working on putting everything together with Dr. Dorfinger. Did I get that? Okay. Putting everything together, and we're targeting March for that. So we will see you all soon. Thank you so much. Have a great night.